My name is Hanneke Meuring, and on behalf of the Raad voor het Openbaar Bestuur, the Netherlands Council for Public Administration, welcome to our 12th ROB lecture. Regrettably, our chairman, Jacques Wallage, cannot be here today, so as a deputy, I have the honor of giving you a brief introduction to today's lecture. The Council for Public Administration is an independent advisory body to the Dutch government and parliament on matters of public administration, democracy and security. We are greatly honored that Nick Clegg was willing to come to The Hague to give this year's lecture. Today's topic is a subject that has been of concern to people in many EU member states lately, not least the United Kingdom and the Netherlands, precisely the two countries that Mr. Clegg is closely connected to. Europe is the focus of political and public interest. It is no longer only a matter for the political elite. And that is a good thing, since more and more Europe is what determines the scope of policy and the methods of our national public administration. The European dimension features prominently in our Council's recommendations. For instance, in our recent advice about the national government, in which we observed that in many areas the national government is increasingly a middle layer between Europe and the decentralized local governments. And in our collection of essays that we published in 2012, entitled Europe, Citizenship and Democracy. Today we are delighted and honored that Nick Clegg can give us an insider's view of the British debate about Europe, and perhaps compare the ways this discussion is being conducted in the two countries. Nick Clegg was and is at the center of the debate about Europe. He was the leader of the Liberal Democrats and he was Deputy Prime Minister of the United Kingdom until May 2015, when the Conservative Party won an absolute majority in the House of Commons with 37% of the votes. Currently, he is a British Member of Parliament. The debate about Europe is heating up in the United Kingdom in a run-up to the referendum on Britain's membership in the EU, which will be held before the end of 2017. The British and Dutch situations show some major parallels when it comes to people's feelings about Europe. In both countries, those for the European project and those against it keep each other more or less balanced, with the opposition being more vocal. The Liberal Democratic parties in both countries are the most fervently pro-Europe or Europhile, while the socialist and nationalist political circles are more often opposed or Eurosceptic. The original reasons underlying the European project, no more war and the creation of a common market, are less and less convincing to citizens and to politicians as well, although the dramatic events in Paris last week might change this perspective. The message from Eurosceptics on both the left and the right of the political spectrum is partly the same, that the European project will threaten the national identity and sovereignty of its member states, undermine the achievements of the national welfare states, and result in excessive bureaucracy and unnecessary regulations. Opinion polls and elections results show that this message is gaining more and more ground. This Euroscepticism is being increased by the Euro crisis, the current problems with refugees, our tense relationship with Russia, the threat of IS, and Europe's inability to formulate effective and broadly supported solutions to these problems. Those in favor of the European Union and the EU membership are having a tough time. The Founding Fathers' ideals of no more war and a common market are no longer enough to convince the public. In addition, the way European institutions work is perceived by many as aloof and expertocratic. We need to do more. In 2012, in his ROB lecture entitled On the Soul of Europe, Professor Gabriel van den Brink argued that the differences between the EU member states could only be resolved within moral horizons. He expressed the wish that the European imagination could go beyond markets and power to include more principles, and especially moral principles. This will require vision and perseverance from our politicians, especially those at national levels. The relationship between the Netherlands and the EU is sometimes called a marriage of convenience. This is certainly also true for the marriage between the United Kingdom and the EU. By the end of 2017, we will see whether this marriage will last after the British have held their referendum on Britain's EU membership. In the Netherlands, the referendum on the EU treaty with Ukraine, which is planned for 2016, will help to answer the question on how much support there is in our country for the European project. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to give the floor to Nick Clegg, who I hope can offer us inspiration and ideas for conducting the debate about the future of Europe with new energy and, in the words of our chairman Jacques Wallage, help us come out of the blind spot of mistrust and cynicism. After the lecture, Mr. Clegg will be happy to answer your questions, and you can debate with him and each other, moderated by my fellow council member, Sarah de Lange. She's sitting over there. If you like to tweet, you're welcome to do so, of course, but please use #democracyandtheEU. Thank you very much.